The other thing that happens is that in interrupting the natural flood and retreat cycle on the banks of a river, they change the composition of the land by the river that's being irrigated and used to grow food. The floods, the good part of floods is that the water running down picks up all sorts of ground from the banks and whatever and carries it along and deposits it elsewhere in a silt, which is usually, not always, but usually a aid to later crop growth. If you speed up the water flow, then it doesn't deposit as much silt. If you, it's the old saying is you can't do one thing. You can't do just one thing. Dams do many things besides the stated purpose of stopping floods, usually. Now the primary purpose is to generate power, and also flood control. China has been in the paper for having built the world's largest, by some measures, dam at a place called Three Gorges. And it's been a booming success. And they have decided to outdo this by building another dam high in the Himalayas. This will produce roughly 3 times the power that the Three Gorges Dam does. And when I heard this, you can't do that. And I still kind of think that they can't, but they're going to try. They have officially decided they're going to try, but they haven't released any plans for anybody to look at and make any meaningful evaluation of. But where they're going to build this is on a place used to be called the Tibetan Plateau. Now it's called the Himalayan Plateau because all things Tibet must go away. And so we have our first video, which is a tour of the Tibetan Plateau, otherwise known as the world's third pole, or the water tower of Asia.
So what is ClickUp? ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity software where you can manage everything and anything.
Unfortunately, the videos have lots of ads. This is where China wants to start building dams to generate power. China has a long, long history of water problems. They have rivers that flood. This causes damage. This causes droughts. This causes crop failures. This causes they desperately need to control water. And one of the ways you control water is by building dams and building channels to have water flow from one place to another. They've been doing this for centuries on smaller scales, but now they're stepping up their things up. And one of the things they have is called the North-South River Project, which takes water from parts of China where there are floods to places where water is needed to grow crops. And the way you do this is to build dams and channels. And they've been doing this, and it's actually a rather interesting process. So we come to the second video, the North-South River Project. I'm not sure how much of this we're going to watch, at least the first 10 minutes, maybe more.
Tom,
Yeah.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Okay.
The dam the dam that we're talking about, I think, that they're planning to build is on the Brahmaputra River.
Yes.
And that will greatly affect the flow to both India and Bangladesh. They seem to
Um,
not care about that at all. So
well,
are we going to hear about that in some?
we're going to hear about that.
Okay.
This is actually the first I heard about this project was that it was an attempt by China to drown the remains of Tibet. We will have an end to the tourists wanting to visit the Tibetan monasteries by drowning them. Not the tourists, the monasteries. The downstream consequences of dam building, humans don't do very good at that. We never have. There's no good reason for that. Hindsight, of course, is always better than foresight, but you would think that since we've been building dams for at least 8,000 years, we would have learned that there are consequences to building dams. But, and not always the desired advertised consequences. Anyway, the North-South River Project is China's attempt to bring water to the fields so they can grow food. This corner of the world has about half of the world's population, and they're hungry. And growing food is important, not only to the Chinese, but to everybody. And to grow food, you need water. And to grow water, you need rivers, you need streams, you need pumps, you need pipes. And you have the North-South River Project, where you take water from where there aren't crops to where there can be crops, or we can try and have crops. And so we have the second video.
Well, as far as China is concerned, but as far as India, it's going to starve.
No, the effect on India and Pakistan and Burma
and Bangladesh
and all of those countries are up in the air. We don't understand we don't understand how they're going to build the dam. We don't understand exactly where they're going to build the dam, but we can look at other such projects and see the consequences and then apply those consequences into these other places. The India and Bangladesh are very upset about this project. It is entirely possible that this could lead to one of the largest famines in recorded history, especially if China wants to do that. The idea that China would never want to do such a thing, yeah, I've got this gold planet over here I can sell to you cheap. No. this dam may be more political than it is economical, because dams, in a lot of ways, dams destroy farmland. The farming in the affected areas works on a cycle of flood, plant, grow, harvest, flood, plant, grow, harvest. If the flood doesn't come, the farmland doesn't get its annual dose of nutrients to be transferred into the plants. And so you get crop failures. The other thing that happens is that the water comes too fast and sweeps away the land. It's a gentle, harmonious process, and dams pretty much work by disrupting this process. Yes, you don't get the floods. Floods are bad. Oh, but floods are good for the farmers. Which is more important, the politicians or the farmers? Who gets to vote?
How do you want to handle questions?
I don't know. Why don't we watch the beginning of the North-South River project and see how China has done this in the past?
In one of our
It's
most
doing
recent
it now.
videos, we discussed a mega project.
So China doesn't seem to really have a problem with trying to do giant water projects, which may or may not be working out as they were intended. The next video. Okay, well, first, questions about this?
Yeah, I have one comment and one question. The last guy, I swear he sounded like Eric Idle from Monty Python. It was correct. Okay,
Yeah, that's him.
totally. All right. So my question though is it your opinion that China, at least a component of these projects, is weaponizing water sequestration?
I don't think they think of it that way.
Okay.
Just like people think of weapons as things that are pointed at them. They don't think of them as things that they are using to do whatever they're doing. It's which side of the bow are you on?
Because my understanding is there's plants that will actually sequester nutrients that they can't use because they're all just so nothing else can use it.
Yeah.
So that's certainly.
But this is what a dam does. You have nutrients flowing down the river, and it hits the dam, and the water stops flowing. And at that point, the primary influence on the particulates in the water becomes gravity, not the inertia and flow of the water. And so the nutrients settle out. This eventually fills the dam, which causes other problems. But it's these unintended consequences that are always coming along and biting people. The next video, which maybe we should just skip, is the Bangko Dam project in China started in, I think, if I remember correctly, in 1950. And it eventually, the dam failed catastrophically, killing hundreds of thousands of people in the downstream floods, because not only did the Bangko Dam fail, the floodwater moving down the riverbed came to the next dam, which it promptly overtopped and collapsed. And I forget if it was 16 or 20 dams that were destroyed along the way. We in this country have been fortunate. I'm not sure why. Probably because we don't have such long rivers. We don't put dams across our big rivers. We put dams on small rivers. There isn't a dam on the Mississippi. There are some locks, but those are to get around the rapids. They aren't. We've stopped the flow of the river. We've just partitioned off a piece of it to the side to make steps for the boats. But the Chinese tend to think, for some reason, in terms of making a dam so they can have a road on the top and then let the water go through. And they've had some very bad experiences, and they appear not to have. Well, we'll do it better this time. Neglecting the idea of stopping the flow of the river is what the problem is.
We have two hands up now.
Okay. Jason.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the current in the Three Gorges Dam?
About what?
The current leaks in the Three Gorges Dam.
Well, those people who know aren't talking, I guess, is the way to put it. China admits that there are small leaks in the Three Gorges Dam. These were anticipated, expected, and normal. In preparing this, I spent several hours talking with my brother, who's an actual engineer and who does this kind of stuff, not designing dams, but other stuff. And he says, yes. He says, I've heard that. He says, it's the first dam in history that has a leak that people aren't concerned about. Where the leaks are, I can imagine, we brainstormed this, we can imagine circumstances where there could be leaks that would not be structurally dangerous to the dam. Seals in the piping to the turbines, stuff like that. Valves that don't close completely, things like this. This is leaks through the dam, but they are not structurally part of the dam leaking. It is not that it's seeping under the dam or around the dam. But since we don't know where the leaks are or how big they are, or we don't know. And those people, assuming people there know, they're not talking.
How do we know that there are even leaks to begin with?
Initially, that was the Chinese response. there are no leaks. And then it's changed in the last year, 18 months, to saying, yes, there are expectable leaks and they are not a danger to the dam. Which, if the Three Gorges goes, it's going to be far worse than the Banquito Dam failure, because it has far more water backed up there. In case you didn't know, the Three Gorges Dam has been overfilled now twice. Overfilled being that they have to open the emergency sluices to let water out. The reasons for this have been excessive rain north of in the upstream, and excessive fill in the catchment area, so that there's less volume than anticipated in the reservoir. Which to me says that they've soaked up a lot of good earth into the bottom of the reservoir where it's not growing anything. But we don't know. They don't tell us. They don't allow measurements. Some of this is implied from satellite photography and changes in, well, you fly over the dam, you can take a picture and see where the border of the reservoir is. And then a week later, you fly over, take another picture, and you do, did it grow? Did it shrink? How much? If it moved a foot that way, then the water level must have gone up so far. It's tricky, and it's mathematics, and we don't, what we know isn't being talked about publicly, I guess is the way to put it. When I first told Scott about the Minga Dam in the Hawaii, he says, "You're joking. You can't put a dam there." But they are apparently going to try. Now, whether they are doing this for political purposes, just to scare people into giving them political concessions so they won't try, or they're going to actually try and do it because they really do need power. I mean, this will give them 3 times the power of the Three Gorges Dam if it works. The downstream effects will be horrendous no matter what they do. Apparently, my first thought when I heard this was that they were actually literally going to try and flood Tibet so that the Tibetans would have no hope of ever having a homeland again, because it would be a lake bed. The amount of destruction to Tibetan culture in this, no matter how they do it, it would be horrendous. You can come back and look at the bad side of the Banquil Dam later. Why don't we proceed to the mega build description of the Himalayan Dam, and then we can have more discussion in the last half hour.
Dean has
Okay,
been cleaned up
Dean?
for about 10
Okay,
minutes.
Dean, yes, I'm sorry. You're muted.
Real quick, because I got to go. I got things to do. You kind of, you know, 700 million people were killed. How do I care? They don't care. It's just people are a commodity, but to
Mhm.
I care. Thank you.
Yeah, this appears to be the cost of doing business. And they just don't seem to worry about it. Maybe they do in their personal lives, but publicly it's such sacrifice for the people. I'm sorry.
This is how all communist regimes work.
I don't know. It's some people I don't understand, and I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but I understand that that's how they think, that's how they feel, and that's their karma, I suppose.
Okay, let's go on to the next one.
Can we skip down to the mega build description of the Himalayan Dam? The first question that comes to my mind is that we build this tunnel and the water's coming down the tunnel and we're spinning the turbines at the bottom and the water goes out further on down the river. But how are we filtering the water going into the tunnel? Because if it just has the typical rocks, boulders, silt, and logs that come along with the wild river, that's going to scour the inside of this tunnel. And if it doesn't have a smooth finish with no cracks, how are we going to fill the cracks but keep them out? Is this tunnel going to collapse because air going through a tunnel does not have the effect of water going through the tunnel, especially water at a high velocity, which it would be doing. Anyway, Chris, you got a question, comment?
You partially answered it. I was going to ask about the tunnel and ask if that solves the problem about sediment settling and
No,
water access by India and Bangladesh.
no, it doesn't. It just changes it.
It seems like it wouldn't change the water access because you would have constant flow of water. But based upon what you said earlier, I could see how it could change the sediment problem.
Yeah, because some of the water, instead of taking this 20-mile trip to pick up sediment, is going to go straight down. So it will have less sediment delivering downstream, and some of that will be delivered into the works of the tunnel, where good.
And then
it might do a super polishing job on the tunnel and make it more efficient.
right. But they will have to filter it out before it goes to the turbine. Almost certainly.
Oh yeah.
So, right.
Yeah.
So it's so even that method is still a problem.
Yeah, it is a we imagine it. Can we do it? I don't know. Mr. Walsh.
I want to talk a little bit about the geopolitical consequences of this, which we already did some. I don't think, well, look at, first of all, Tibet. I mean, in the 1950s, China just kind of moved in and took over Tibet and saying it's ours. It's always been ours. So we have a right to it. Tibetans kind of objected to that. They considered that their own country, but China. China also.
So did the world.
Yeah. China also doesn't give a rat's ass about Bangladesh.
No.
They have no power. The only thing that could affect China's thinking on this maybe is India, because they are also a nuclear power. But I don't think that would. I don't think China cares too much about what anyone else thinks as far as what they want to do. The only thing that can stop them, I think, is the forces of nature. If they just can't handle a project of this type, we'll see. But I think they're going to keep working on it.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. They have built many things that people said couldn't be done or shouldn't be done, and they have gone ahead and done them. And like the Banquil Dam, engineers around the world said this is not a good plan.
Yeah,
and then over it went, and the estimates of damage were, one of the records set was supposedly that it was the least under the damage was so much greater than anyone had ever projected that it set a record. Most disastrous failure or something like that.
Yeah, but
it hasn't stopped them from other projects.
Right. I was going to say they seem to just fluff that off, and they don't care if they've killed hundreds of thousands or millions of their own population. They take it in stride and just keep on going. I guess their own people are expendable, not to mention people of other countries.
It's there are so many reasons emotionally I feel not to do this. I can't imagine that when this came up, they just the people in charge didn't look at it and say, "Oh, really? Yeah, but no, find a different way." But if you really don't care about the rest of the world, well, I can see they might try it.
One follow-up question I have is that if they do this tunnel, or even at the dam, if they're generating all this electricity, another big project is just getting it out, building up the infrastructure to transmit the power.
Yep. David,
what would it look like if they dug that tunnel? They'd obviously have to block the water off at the upstream side until they got it dug, right?
No, you could take and dig it from the bottom upwards, and then explode the top like a removable cap.
Yeah.
And then you'd have water coming down the tunnel, and I wouldn't want to be in the tunnel when that started.
Well, but they've got to have the turbines at the bottom.
Yeah.
That the water turns to create the power. And so you've got to have a set of shutoffs at the top.
Why?
Well, when they remove the cap.
Well, no, you've got to be able to shut it off to do any work on the turbines, don't you?
No, there's no water coming down the tunnel yet. Anyway,
Yeah, once the water was coming down the tunnel, then you've got a problem if you want to work on the turbines.
Exactly.
You,
But
you,
you
you
know
need a
that
way of,
you know that the turbines are going to wear out, and so you've got to be able to control the flow of the water through the tunnel somehow.
Aren't those things usually individual? Like you have a turbine in a tube, and each one of those you can shut off and service independently.
If you had, say, 100 turbines at the bottom of the tunnel, you would want to be able to shut off each one individually.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just bypass all turbines and then you can turn each turbine on by itself.
Yeah, but if
have
you,
to be able to shut off that bypass to get the flow through the other turbines. So basically you're talking about shutting off and opening up this flow of water that generates this huge amount of power.
But I mean, like the Hoover Dam, you can service each turbine individually and not shut down all power generation. You could just do
yes,
one at a time.
Yeah. But
yes, but there you have,
Those
you have
generations are parallel, not linear.
well, that's part of it, but also it's not an active flow at the dam. It's passive. Coming down the river like that, the water coming down the tunnel is not static. It's got a pile of kinetic energy coming down that tunnel and stopping it at the bottom. I don't think you could stop it at the bottom. You're going to have to divert it somehow. Maybe you can stop it at the top and then get the 40 miles of water out of the tube, and then
that sounds a lot more feasible than thinking you're going to stop it at the bottom.
yeah, but then you've got to fill the tube again.
Slowly.
It's no matter how they.
It sounds like a major challenge. And if they ever lost control, it would wear away the shortcut for the whole river, right?
I want to know how they're going to make this tunnel. I can see that tunnel being scoured from being 500 feet across or whatever they think it's going to be to being much larger than that very rapidly.
Right.
Water is a great abrasive.
Yep.
If you put it under pressure and high velocity.
Especially if you pick up some gravel along the way.
And sand. And trees.
Yep. Well, there won't be any trees in the middle of the hill, the mountain.
Yeah,
but there will be rocks and gravel and sand.
And sand.
And sand and water is essentially what a water jet is, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
For cutting steel and concrete.
Mm-hmm. How are you going to filter that out of the? Well, how do they?
You can't filter it.
You can't filter it while the water's moving. Really.
You're going to wear right through the filter with the sand and gravel.
Is there some way you could apply an electric field across moving water and get energy out of it?
Some jet engines, like for helicopters, utilize, you spin the air to try to get the particulates and stuff out before it goes into the turbine section.
Yeah.
I don't know if that works with water.
Sounds like a Dyson vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. 10.
Well, my thoughts have changed a little bit since I put my hands up. My first thought was, this is a challenging dam to build, It's going to be a hell of a dam to maintain. And in the process of doing all that, you're ignoring the obvious example of maybe a superior but well-known technique of producing power, and that's called solar voltaic cells. And you only have to build more of them and put them in more places to achieve a very easy to maintain and sustain power system that doesn't have the geopolitical or the um, earthquakes. You know, if you have an earthquake and you damage a few solar panels, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think solar, wind, and battery is still a path to success all the way around. And I don't know what maybe they like the idea of keeping their engineers busy doing things. And they have to have people that like to pour concrete, do the concrete work, and they have to have the metal guys doing their metal and so forth. I don't know. But it seems like they've got options here, and it doesn't have to be the one that's going to create the most warfare.
Yeah, I think this project is primarily driven by ideals different than making power. I think this is about China becoming bigger, stronger, more important. I am, and this led me actually to putting up the 5th video, which we don't really have time, but I urge you to watch. Thorium! We don't need to do this anymore. We can do thorium instead.
Well, thorium hasn't been totally proven out yet, has it?
Well, no, but not on large scale, but on smaller scales. We have
Sorry.
we have small thorium power plants of one sort or another that are flying around in outer space, mostly. But we haven't put the money into them because radioactive.
Thorium is basically a breeder reactor. It's used to create the uranium to create a nuclear reaction that'll produce energy. The uranium that's created, however, is not a weapons grade, so you can't make weapons out of starting with a thorium reactor.
Yeah, it's a very.
That's why uranium was chosen in the first place, by the way.
Yeah, you can make plutonium out of it, and that makes a better bang. But we're not listening for bangs. We want a little more controllable power.
Yep.
And thorium, actually several of Robert Heinlein's juveniles in the 1950s had thorium powered riverboats and locomotives and even a car. It's why we didn't go that route.
No big bang.
In addition to the mega projects, I don't know. Safe, reliable.
They had one running at Oak Ridge. They wanted to do it for an airplane, but it didn't make the big bang, so they turned the switch off on the funding.
Yeah, that was. Anyway, I urge you to watch both the other 2 videos we haven't seen today. One about the failure of the Benkel Dam demonstrates what happens when dams fail. This was really. You think of the water. We had just down the road here, the Rapidan Dam failed this summer.
Yeah.
And it was little and tiny and embarrassing and a figure of fun. And that was a little dam. When big dams fail, it goes up exponentially, faster than exponentially. It becomes huge. Imagine a wall of water coming down the river towards you that's 50 feet high and as wide as the canyon. How do you stop it?
How do you get out of its way?
Yeah,
as fast as possible.
yeah, but that's the problem. And when your dam fails, that can be the result. And the consequences, the long-term consequence, it goes a little bit into the long-term consequences. You wipe out millions of acres of downstream, and people, there are estimates of the number of human lives lost, the amount of property loss, whatever, but really they're just guesses because nobody knows. You could just say that the entirety of the town is gone. There are no buildings, there are no foundations, there are no people, there are no cattle, no looms. It's just all gone. And where it is, somewhere down the 500 miles to the sea, all of that stuff was left there somewhere, but finding any of it? No. Anyway, I urge you to watch both of those. David.
Do you want to post your videos on the meetup site?
Aren't they already there?
No.
I thought I saw them there.
I thought you said you told me that too, but I didn't find them. But you put them on the chat. So David, they're in the chat.
They're up at the top of the chat.
Okay.
Oh.
I don't have edit permission for the meetup site, so I can't do it.
For those of you that didn't get here soon enough, I'll go ahead and cut and paste that and then repost it.
Thank you.
Why don't we repost it on the meetup site too?
I don't know if you can do that after the meeting.
I think you can put it in the comments.
I just posted it back on the chat.
Okay, thanks. One of the things about solar energy is that we're seeing a price decrease of something like 20% every time we double the capacity of the manufacturing in terms of learning curve. And so if it's competitive right now with coal, it's going to be competitive with gas soon, if it's not already competitive. And Tony Seba is expecting it to be cheaper than buying the fuel for a gas plant within the next 5 years. At that point, it doesn't make sense to keep putting the fuel into a natural gas peaking plant if you don't need it. It's cheaper just to build more solar photovoltaic. The question is, with nuclear, can it be done cheaply enough to compete with solar as solar build-out occurs through the rest of the world? The rest of the world isn't going to build carbon burning power plants. The rest of the world is going to go straight to solar photovoltaic because it's cheaper.
There's a cost to solar which is pretty much ignored, which is the loss of crops underneath it. You can grow some
crops.
things under solar screens, but a
You can
lot
grow
of
lots of grazing land under solar panels, though. Maybe not corn, but a lot of other crops.
some you can, but not all.
I just looked it up. Solar power is generally considered cheaper than natural gas right now.
Mm-hmm.
In good locations.
Yeah.
Not Germany. Morocco does very well.
You drive through Germany and you see so many solar panels on top of roofs there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more than
Mm-hmm.
here.
Yep. But it's a better investment in Morocco. If you're just looking for an investment.
Okay, are we done with your presentation, Tom?
Pretty much. Yep. Questions?
Good one, Tom.
Thank you.
Covered it pretty well. So the implications for the future, do you have a quick summary for us?
It's always good to be able to make your plans where your critics can't see them. China has always been very good at doing that, and we have great, stunning announcements of great successes, the Banqual Dam, and then later it is discovered that there was this problem that was actually written up in the textbooks at the time, but you seem to have ignored that page. And so the world came around and bit you, and 270,000 of your citizens. But you're going to go on, okay. And there's not much that can be done about it. So the Chinese people are not the only, and the Chinese governments are not the only ones. We have done this as well. Our failures are usually not quite as big because we have a less fatalistic view of life, perhaps. We don't really expect to die until we are very old. We don't think that bad things are going to happen to us. Whereas other cultures seem to think that it's a matter of, hooray, I've lived to see the new day. And they're very grateful for that. And that might be a better, well, no. There are advantages to both outlooks. There have been, can I say this? It has been stated by reputable sources that they are going to use the tunnel method rather than building the series of dams. But the reputable sources are not the official sources. And it may just be that they're thinking that if they build the tunnel and it fails, then there's going to be this kind of a downstream effect. Whereas if they build a series of dams and they start failing, there's going to be this downstream effect, and that will be much, much, much worse So we won't do it that way. If you think of a chain of dams failing from an altitude of 12,000 feet, the amount of energy in that water as it hits the sea and the damage it will have done along the way. Again, the Banquil Dam, maybe they did learn from history. We'll see. Anyone else?
Well, my prediction is that at some point they are going to go ahead, whether it's a dam or tunnels, and that will have an effect downstream. And it probably will at some point fail, which will cause a catastrophic event downstream. And whether that creates more international conflict is kind of an open question, but there's a chance. There's going to be more international conflict coming up anyway, partly due to climate change, because people are going to get displaced and all that kind of stuff. So this will only contribute to those stresses.
Yeah. Whatever they do is going to change the flood grow cycle across Pakistan. All of the downstream farmers all that agriculture is based on a flood plant grow, and the floods are going to be changed. There's not going to be as much useful silt in them. The fields are going to become under, I can't think of the right word, fertilized. Fields will become less fertile because of that change in cycle. And pretty much doesn't matter how you put the dam in, it has that effect. And people think of dams as being flood control, but that's really almost the least of what they do. They do many other things to the both upstream and downstream ecologies.
Okay, well, thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Next week,
We'll see you next week. Who's next week?
Jason is continuing his energy series, I believe, but I don't know exactly what he's doing.
Okay, and the week after that, let's see, 15.
You're up.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing?
Yes, I'm planning to do something on the future of music.
Oh.
Something a little different. Music industry is going to change. Music itself is going to change. So it should be interesting. I'm still researching it.
Okay.
Okay.
And the week after that, I think is. No, I'm not sure who's the week after that.
That would be the 29th.
Then that's Bob Kaufman.
That would be the 5th week. That would be Bob Kaufman.
Bob Kaufman.
I don't know what he's doing. Okay. See you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.